We're really happy to be in Long McQuade, and have gotten to know the people in the store over the years. And what surprises me is that, I mean, it's a pretty large company, almost 70 stores, but it's still that every person that works here is a musician. Most of them play, most of them gig out. So you have the advantages of the old school small pro shop where everybody that worked in it is an actual musician with experience. And then you have all the advantages of a larger company that can provide financing and stuff like that. And what completely blows my mind is that the guy at the top, Steve Long, still goes out and plays. He's not just a corporate guy. He's an actual musician that goes out and plays around Toronto. When I heard that, I was just so blown away. And a lot of our partners are like that, like Levy's, the Levy's brothers at NAM. Is rather than going out and going to shows or going to parties, they go back to the hotel rooms and they play guitar. I mean, these guys run one of the largest gig bag corporations in the world, let alone Canada, and again, run by musicians. So I'm a musician. I started on baritone ukulele because that's all I was so small, that's the only thing I could hold. I started on that when I was 4, graduated piano when I was 5, started taking drums when I was 10, and then guitar at 12. The whole company started on a kitchen table, about this big, and we've grown over the last almost 30 years to second or third largest string instrument manufacturer in Canada. So right here in Saskatoon, if you take all the instruments that we built here and all the instruments that we bring in from China, that puts us at the second or third largest in Canada. Godin, of course, is by far the largest. We'll never catch them. Don't even want to catch them because those guys are so huge. But that was the other interesting thing about Godin. I'm here to talk about Dingwall, but I'm talking about Godin instead. I toured their factory a couple of years ago and had a chance to spend a day with Robert, the head of Godin. And same thing. He's not a musician so much, but he has this passion, the same kind of passion that us small shop guys do. Now, small shop guys, we don't do it for the money. We build basses because we love it. It's something we have to do. It's not something that we do for a living. It's something we do to live. And there's a big difference between that. Robert was the same kind of guy. I mean, he sat down and he'd talk about these fixtures that he built to test guitars, and he was just like this little kid talking about these excited nuts and bolts kind of things. It was really cool. So we started on a kitchen table back in 1988 and started building basses in 1993 was when we came up with the first one. And it was pretty much the world's first fan fret electric bass guitar. And the reason we did that was at the time, 5 strings were becoming more popular, and people were having a problem getting the low B to sound clearly on their 5 string. And we were getting a lot of bass orders, but we were turning the bass orders down because we didn't know how to fix that B. And having experience as a small child with piano, I always remember, toddling up to the piano and just banging on the keys, and those low notes just had this richness. I still remember it as plain as day. They had this richness, they had this character that you just didn't hear in a regular low B. And so that was the first thing that struck my mind was, well, if they can solve this with pianos, why can't they do it with basses? So rather than talk to bass builders and go, how do you make a better bass? I talked to piano builders and said, how do you guys do it? How are you guys getting the low notes to sound so clear? And they all said the same thing. They all said it's all about the length, man. It's pretty simple. If you go into a big concert hall, you're going to have a big piano. And that piano is going to have extremely long low strings. But the beauty of it is that even unamplified, you play a chord, and anywhere in that concert hall, you can pick out every single note in that chord. They speak more clearly because of the length. So, all we've basically done, if you look at our basses, the first thing you're probably going to see besides that knot you're at now, green, is the fan frets. And what the fan frets are doing is they're basically allowing us to have 5 different scale lengths on this bass, going from short to long. And if you take a look at a piano or take a look at a harp, you have short treble strings, long bass strings. So the fan frets are essentially multi-scale. That's actually a better way to describe them. And so that's how we're able to get the extended length on the B string to solve that problem without creating another problem, which would be a super long G string, which would be really hard to play and would sound too bright. So for 15 years, we pretty much had the fan fret bass guitar market to ourselves. We're the only ones doing it. And I got to tell you, it was pretty lonely. And only in the last 5 years have we seen companies in Eastern Europe and companies in Japan, namely Ibanez and ESP, Schecter. Those are the ones you'd know, but there are lots of other small companies in Japan that do fan frets as well. And I get this question asked a lot. And, what do you think about Ibanez doing fan frets? And to tell you the truth, I'm kind of proud of it actually. To be able to have impacted the market enough for Ibanez, who when I was a kid, they were my heroes. For someone like them to take a look at what we're doing and go, hey, we like that enough that we're going to do it too. I'm hugely proud. And if anything, it's done great things for our company, because since they came on board and started doing fan frets, they've kind of pulled our brand up along with their advertising. So currently we're doing about 1,400 basses a year out of our Saskatoon shop. That would be about 220 built right here in Saskatoon, and then the rest would be sourced in China, and then they come to Saskatoon, and we tear them all apart, and we do the frets, we do the nut. Where's one of them here? And set them back up, and the guys that work on it sign off on it. So in this case, I can't read that. That was probably Murray, and then Jeremy.
That's Mike and Jeremy.
Mike and Jeremy. Sorry, where's Mike? There's Mike back there. So Mike had his hands on this. He was the guy that did the frets, and Mike's an excellent bass player, so he knows how a bass should feel. Ryan, who's right here, he would do the setups on all the Canadian instruments, and he's also an excellent bass player. So we have bass players who are working on these instruments, making them feel good for bass players. So we've got 8 people at the shop. 2 of them are dedicated for the NG2s and combustions, and then everybody else works on the Canadian instruments, which would be starting with the ABZ and then going to the Afterburner 1, and then Afterburner 2, and then a new one a couple of years ago is the Afterburner HS, which, if you get a chance to, this is owned by Kaylin here from McQuade. The HS stands for heavy and solid. This thing weighs 12 pounds. It's incredible. And it's a departure for us. And actually, Kaylin was the guy that actually got me to understand heavy basses, because everything we've tried to do in the entire history of the company is make the lightest bass possible. And I never understood why anybody would want a heavy bass, but it was Kaylin that came to me. He said, well, listen, I've grown up on Warwicks, and I've grown up on Spectres, was it?
Yeah.
And there's a tonality, there's an attack that you can only get from a heavy bass. And so he was the guy that finally helped me to understand what was going on with heavy basses. So now we have heavy ones, we have light ones, we have everything in between. I personally have 0 art training, 0 engineering training, 0 manufacturing training, 0 business training. Somehow I wound up at the head of the company, and I was lucky enough to find one with the same name, so it's easy to find where I work. But I couldn't have done it alone. Had lots of mentors. So Glenn McDougall, number 1. Does everybody know who Glenn McDougall is? Saskatoon legend, Fury Guitars. I describe him as the Canadian Leo Fender. He started the electric guitar industry in Canada. Hugely proud to have known him for so long, and he's basically taken me under his wing and just taught me almost everything I know. Tom Anderson was another one. Mike Tobias has been a big help. Bob Taylor's been a big help. Dave Borisoff from Hipshot has been a huge mentor. And Hipshot, does anybody know where Hipshot got their name?
Wasn't it the detuners on to basically drop down the beat?
On guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a B tuner for country players, and it had this bar that stuck out the side, and you'd push the guitar against your hip, and it would make the B string detune. And so the whole company started with that. I don't know how many of those they sold, but the second product they came out with was bought by this guy, and it was an extender key. So it was the first detuner, and that was what really made the company. They pretty much built the whole company on the detuners, and eventually they came out with these ultralight tuners here, which are just a brilliant design. These things shave almost half the weight of a standard tuner off just by intelligent manufacturing. These are made in the USA, and they further customized them for us. Look at how short these posts are. So we work closely with them. They make our bridges for us. They make the tuners for us. They customize those for us. We're looking at doing some licensing with them. I've got a few bridge designs that will work for standard fenders. We're looking at getting them to manufacture them for us. We're also looking at getting them to do some more saddles, which maybe in the next year we'll see. Hipshot's a fantastic company, and they're very passionate about what they do too. You can tell when you talk to their employees. They just have such a respect for the craftsmanship of what they do. We get so used to, in this day and age, we get so used to, throwaway products. You buy a DVD player, it's cheap, it's great, works great. 2 years later, it's broken, you throw it away, you get a new one. And that's become so common that when you actually run into craftsmanship where an instrument is not designed for 2 years, it's not designed for a decade, it's designed for centuries. Possibly, your grandchildren or their grandchildren will still have this instrument around and still remember you because you were the one who bought it. I mean, this is the kind of craftsmanship that we're passionate about, that Hipshot's passionate about, that most of the people we work with are. And so I think that translates to an instrument that has a soul to it. I've picked up instruments where I've had my eyes closed, and you pick up a guitar and you feel it, you put it down, you pick up another one, and you can sense there's something special about an instrument that has a soul. And maybe you feel the same way too, I'm not sure. So our lineup, we have 5 categories of instruments, and if you took each one and divided it into its categories, we have 12 models in total that range in price from about $1,200 all the way up to, I don't have one here, but we have instruments going all the way past $12,000 for the prima artist. We don't sell many of those, but they are an instrument that is as good as you can get as far as woodworking goes, and as good as you can get as far as tone and feel goes.